Question number 1. My 8-year-old son was completely mute in restaurants and public settings, and then after treatment began, he became more audible but unexpectedly loud and inappropriate in restaurants. How can I support him in managing his public behaviors without causing stress around his communication?
So this is a great question. I don't hear this often that a child would be getting loud and inappropriate, but I'll kind of explain what might be going on. So here's how I see this. The child was pretty kind of either shut down, inhibited, didn't have the tools, didn't really know how to make the changes. Most likely this parent who entered treatment was taught skills herself or himself as to how to help their child make progress, which probably involved, social engagement, which helped him become more involved, probably instead of answering for the child, started to bring the child into social communication where the child's now an active participant. And so the parent has unlearned or is unlearning their kind of enabling or their high pressure approach. And now the child is more of a participant. And what has happened is the child is kind of he's only 8 years old, still young, is experimenting, getting out there, finding their voice, being more audible, progressing across the bridge, maybe through sounds or inappropriate ways of interacting is what is probably confusing a little bit to me. What that means is most individuals at 8 years old know kind of what's appropriate and not appropriate. They have kind of an awareness to that. If this is not the case and the parent is seeing a lot of what I call inappropriate behaviors, inappropriate verbalizations, then I would wonder what it may be going on developmentally with this child. Is this child very young? Why it may not be that, and it might be a neurotypical child just experimenting, is the child is still 8, right? Still little, but not too little, and experimenting and having fun, and maybe a way to get some attention from either siblings and just experimenting. It's almost like I found my voice, or kind of, and feeling maybe pretty good. So I think that there's angles to see it as a neurotypical 8-year-old child that's experimenting, finding their voice, and that's it. And now the parent needs to kind of figure out how to help that child, which I'll get to. Or is this child a bit delayed? I would think if this child had some delays, let's face it, we do have kids with delays. We have kids that are on the autism spectrum. By no means am I saying this, but sometimes you see these inappropriate behaviors, but it would be across the board. It wouldn't just be in this isolated situation in a restaurant. So if it's not across the board, that the child is not acting inappropriate ongoing in all settings now that he found his voice, because you can be inappropriate non-verbally. Assuming this child is neurotypical and not any sort of developmental social delays, emotional delays on the autism spectrum, has a neurodivergent situation going on, I would say that at 8 years old, a really big part of treatment is helping a child acknowledge and assess. In other words, acknowledge that it can be hard or scary to use words. They learn about the bridge. They know where they're at on the bridge. I mean, this is not something we ignore. We don't just do treatment and just hope for the best, because then the child doesn't have the control. So understanding the bridge and where they are, understanding when words are coming out and when they're not. We talk about this with the kids, because in order to truly build coping skills, to be able to truly overcome this, they need to be able to understand, to gain that control. So having an open conversation and saying, hey, seems like you're crossing the bridge and you're finding your voice, and this is awesome. You must feel very comfortable. I always say that. You must feel very comfortable. That's awesome. But you know what? There's a lot of people around. Let's kind of keep the volume a little lower. And maybe the child will laugh or goof off and may even say, oh, you always tell me, you used to say I should use my voice. Now I'm using my voice. The parent could say, and you must be comfortable right now. And that's awesome. But we're in a restaurant and there's a lot of people here. One message I'd like to give to our listeners is we don't want to talk to our child in a way that is not open and honest. When you talk to kids that begin to overcome this, one of the things they appreciate is how people are meeting them where they are, talking to them pretty matter-of-factly. And again, the child is 8, they're not 3. So you can have an open dialogue. What would you say to a child that's 8 years old that doesn't have SM but acting inappropriate in a restaurant? What would you say to them? And that's how you talk to them. You don't want to treat them in a special way and say, well, oh, he's found his voice, so I'm just going to let it go. No, you talk as if he is doing something that may not be socially appropriate, but definitely validate that he's feeling comfortable and moving across the bridge and excited that he doesn't seem to be as uncomfortable, and happy for him. But if this mother or father says, you know what, our child has had some inappropriate behaviors globally, because he wasn't speaking in so many settings, it wasn't as noticeable, it wasn't as obvious. But when we really do an inventory, the child does have some atypical behaviors. That's where you may want to look into some other things that may be going on and kind of keep your antenna up as to, could this be a more delayed child in certain areas? Maybe there is something else going on like ASD or something.